Do you think that TCU is struggling in the playoff rankings because the Big 12 brands, Texas and OU, are having down years? How will the committee view the Big 12 in the 2024 and beyond when the conference doesn't have the big brands anymore? Well, chance it may not matter because you may have an expanded playoff by then, and it sounds like every Power 5 conference is getting at least a team in there. I mean, if you're taking your 6 highest rated conference champs, it sounds like you're going to be gifted at least one spot, whether your conference deserves it or not. Now, outside of that, I think your question is valid. I think that TCU is a good case study right now for how little respect that conference is going to get off the bat when you lose Texas and OU. Now, if you're a newcomer to this party, you may be looking at this and saying, wait a second, I've watched the Big 12 this year, and Texas has been not great at all. Oklahoma's been even worse. Why should those two being down delude this product? TCU, Kansas State, like those teams have looked like the better teams. Yes, friends, you're right. And that's your problem. You're way too new to this. You don't understand how built up that Texas brand gets every year. Now, Oklahoma has fulfilled their end of the deal. I'm not going to knock the Sooners, but you don't understand the gross misconception that as Texas goes, so too does the Big 12. But yet, that is the either conscious or subconscious feel from a lot of people who have sway in this whole matter. And that is the problem that TCU fans are faced with right now. Let's be clear. This is not a problem yet, and it won't be a problem. If TCU wins their next 3 games, and that is at Baylor, Iowa State, conference title game, they're good. No amount of anti-Horned Frog bias could hurt them because an undefeated Big 12 champ will be in the playoff. If they lose one game, if they lose 30-29 to Baylor this week, it's going to break loose. It's going to be bad, and they could be in line to get the shaft. I have heard a lot of talk about the Big 12 this week from a lot of different places and a lot of people whose opinions, quite frankly, I don't necessarily respect when it comes to this sport. Love hearing them talk about pro games, not just football, but maybe not so much college football. Let me be careful with my words here. Look at me being responsible. We have got to get people who only casually cover the sport to stop talking about gambling. One of the worst things that has ever happened is also one of the best things that's ever happened. One of the best things that ever happened to college football is the legalization of sports betting. I mean, I got 10 different apps I could pull up right now in Nashville. When you drive around downtown, there are billboards that show live up-to-the-minute odds on games. And if you live in a state where it's not legalized yet, it will blow your mind when it does get legalized. But anyway, that's great because it gives you the freedom to do what you were going to the Cayman Islands digitally to do in another life. But one of the worst things in the world is also that sports betting has proliferated even the mainstream of media in college football. And you got folks who couldn't rub 2 nickels together when it comes to placing a wager, who are trying to talk about gambling within the context of college football. And how many times have you heard this? I just heard it twice the other day. TCU, odds makers say, if they played on a neutral field, would be an underdog against the top 8 or 9 teams in the country. It doesn't matter. And you're talking to a guy here that doesn't even rank teams. All I do is put out a power rating every week. You think I'm sounding hypocritical? I'm not. No, I am absolutely the guy who puts out a power rating, which is solely based on who I would favor against who on a neutral field every week. But do you notice what I say when I put that rating out? I say the following, and then I put it in the tweet. Power ratings are not rankings. And if you've heard me talk about them on this show, I have told you before. How you would hypothetically match up on a neutral field in a game that hasn't been played yet has no bearing on what your playoff resume or your playoff positioning should be. Point spreads are not competition. Point spreads hypothetically are not sports. It's just odds placed on a game that may or may not happen depending on the matchup. Your merit is what gets you your ranking. At least that's how it's supposed to happen. These fools talking about how TCU, if they lose a game, should be out of it because odds makers say they wouldn't be favored. You'd never in a million years say that about the University of Texas. You'd never say it about Oklahoma. And the reason has nothing to do with a blind resume test, because truth be told, you people would wrap yourselves in an intellectual pretzel if you had to blind resume your own statements. If you had to blind resume your way through your own rankings, sometimes you'd find out, as it turns out, I did have some teams ranked too high just because of their logo, just because of the branding. So 2 truths here. One of them is the committee will swear to you, brands don't matter, teams don't matter, we're just judging resumes. The second truth is that's a lie. The brands absolutely matter. I want you to imagine a world, and this isn't a knock on Texas, it's a knock on some of the prevailing thought out there. I want you to imagine a world right now where Steve Sarkisian has Texas 10-0. Texas 10-0. And they're in the driver's seat to win the Big 12 championship. I want you to imagine Texas tripping up 33-31 against Baylor this week, and then winning against Iowa State and winning the Big 12 championship game. Can you imagine the committee even giving consideration to leaving them out of the playoff? Like they will leave TCU out of the playoff with the exact same resume? These folks out here talking about gambling have no clue what they're talking about in most cases. But let me turn your logic back on you. This is, if you get in a debate like this over the next week, just do something like this. Oh, you want to talk power ratings, do you? You want to talk odds making, do you? I pulled up my numbers. You can feel free to pull up any of the most reputable models out there. They'll all look virtually the same, maybe a little discrepancy here and there. I got TCU's games they played here this year. They've won all of them. They're undefeated. They've got wins against the number 10, 13, 18, 28, 29, 30, 40, and 41st teams in the country. Their entire conference schedule consists of teams ranked in the top 45. Power rated in the top 45. Who else has that? I'm being told the Big 12's down this year. No, the Big 12 doesn't have an alpha Georgia or Ohio State or something like that. It is a very, very good league this year. A very good league. If you'd bother to pay attention, instead of reading some website that puts out hypothetical point spreads, that's a different world. The odds-making world is a totally different world. I'm one of the people who puts out power ratings, and I will readily tell you, in no world should the Vegas odds-making process look like the college football playoff rankings process. Totally different worlds. So, yeah, TCU is probably on their way to getting the shaft unless they take care of business and win every remaining game. That'd be my advice. Guys, thanks for watching Late Kick. Make sure to leave a comment. I love interacting with you. But most of all, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep all of this free.